Get the whole story.
Good morning from the KTN News Center here at the Standard Group Center in the capital, Nairobi. This is Inside Politics, Kenya's premier and only Sunday morning political talk show where we try to dissect the biggest political and policy and governance issues in the Republic. Many thanks for joining us on this 8th day of August 2021. Today, exactly 366 days to August 9th, 2022. The general election. That is, of course, the one-year countdown officially beginning. We are asking, is the nation ready for the 2022 general election? Is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, ready to manage an election? They'll get into a lot of timelines and calendar and operations, and the plan is already in the public domain. We'll get into that. In the meantime, we'll focus on the fall, collapse, total, it seems, of the relationship between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. This is following Deputy President William Ruto's trip to Uganda being halted last week, stopped on his tracks, quite literally, at the Wilson Airport. And one of his allies, a Turkish national, has been detained by immigration officials. We'll get into that as well. In the meantime, the divorce of the National Super Alliance has been finalized. The party leaders of Mani National Congress, Wiper Party, and Ford Kenya signing the exit pact. So what does this mean for them? What does this entail for the ODM party leader Raila Odinga? Stay with us to try to make sense of that. Well, this is many thanks for joining us on this action-packed show. Stay with us for the next 120 minutes here as we try and make sense of what's happening in this country in politics and in governance. Before I introduce my panel this morning, let's go into the issue, the top story this morning, the controversy surrounding the identity and business links of a Turkish national at the center of Deputy President William Ruto's aborted trip to Uganda have deepened. This is after the Turk was arrested and detained, questioned by police for several hours. Harun Aidin was held for terrorism claims, even though the government cleared him in June to do business in Kenya. Let's begin with Brian Obuya.
Harun Aidin landed at the Wilson Airport Saturday morning, where he was picked up by immigration officials moments after his arrival from Uganda. Immigration officials handed Aidin over to Kilimani DCI, who in return handed him over to the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit. Harun was then whisked away by anti-terror police to the ATPU headquarters. It remains unclear why the man whom associates of the DP say is a distinguished businessman was detained. At some point, the Turkish embassy had said he was not involved in crime and was engaged in legal business. Indeed, a work permit issued by Kenyan authorities has surfaced, showing that Aidin was granted permission to work in Kenya starting June this year for a period of 2 years. Last Monday, the troubled Turkish national was set to travel to Uganda alongside several associates of the DP. Mr. Ruto was forced to cut short his trip after immigration officials denied him exit from the airport and insisted that he needed clearance to travel.
Uchukue mtu anatoka nchi nyingine umfrustrate kwa sababu ya siasa, ana ndugu yake hapa, ana watu wao hapa, kama kuna watu wao wa karibu ni mimi na wengine.
A flight manifest had shown that 8 passengers were scheduled to be on the flight, including Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro, Kapseret's Oscar Sudi, Kinango Member of Parliament Benjamin Tayari, and Elijah Rono. Eric Ruto and David Langat were also on the flight. Politicians allied to the deputy president and the deputy president himself have been protesting his detention, insisting that Aidin was not a criminal but a respected businessman who has a permit to operate in Kenya. The deputy president insisting that the frustrations of the government was sending away investors.
Business people like Kariuki and Keroche are criminalized. Now you have gone even to foreign investors. you want to criminalize them on account of pettiness and political competition.
Lawyer Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi claimed that the state had refused to grant Aidin a right of legal representation. Abdullahi tweeted that the right to counsel of one's choice doesn't apply to Turkish national Mr. Harun Aidin. Abdullahi went on to say that he had been denied access to see him allegedly on orders from above. Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho, in an interview with KTN 3 days ago, claimed that the Deputy President was stopped from traveling out of the country over lack of requisite documents.
I am the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I cannot associate with terrorists. I know what I'm doing.
Harun Aidin runs a company known as Unit 2HA Investment Energy Africa Limited. He was issued a work permit by the Department of Immigration Services in Kenya on June 30th, 2021. That work permit expires on June 29th, 2023. Brian Obuya, KTN, Weekend Prime.
Thank you, Brian. That's where we begin. Let me introduce my panel this morning. I have with me Dismas Mokua, the Duke of Mosocho himself, political risk analyst.
Thank you very much.
Javas Bigambo, and also lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Joining us later on will be my colleague, political reporter here at the Standard Group, Roslyn Obala. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this morning. Let me begin with you, Dismas. Let's begin with the Uhuruto thing. And of course, it points out to the bigger problem in that union. Many say it is irredeemably gone. What is your take on the DP of this country being stopped at the airport from a visit, a private visit to Uganda, but he's still the DP of this country? What did you take from that?
You know, Ben, thanks for the opportunity. And there are two sides to the story. There's a story being given by the DP and his Tanga folks, and there's another story coming from the state. But maybe we need to look at the basics. Dr. William Samoei Ruto has been an assistant minister, has been an MP, an assistant minister, a minister, and now deputy president for about 10 years. He must be aware of the best practices in travel arrangements within the state. And even if he doesn't know the best practices, he's got protocol officers who ought to be alive to this. So this idea that we are being told that Dr. Ruto was traveling in his capacity as a private citizen, there's a bit of voodoo logic in that, because the moment you are sworn into office, if you are the president or the deputy president, indeed a cabinet minister, you never stop being a state officer when you say that you are on a private visit. Assuming that he was going to Uganda, and assuming that he's a private citizen, and he lands in Uganda, if there's a crisis in Kampala or Entebbe, how is Ruto going to be treated? Is he going to be treated as the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, or is he going to be treated as an ordinary citizen? And in my view, the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, and indeed any other nation. Like, for instance, you cannot imagine that Kamala Harris, the U.S. Vice President, will try to fly out of the U.S. coming to a nation saying that it's a private visit. Because if he goes to Uganda and, say, for instance, he gets food poisoning, if something happens to the deputy president, Kenya can easily get into a national crisis. So that is unacceptable. Then there is the second level. He says that he was assisting an investor do business in Uganda instead of Kenya. Now, the principal responsibility of a president or a deputy president is to market Kenya. So does it mean that William Samoei Ruto has no faith in Kenya as a nation, where he's the deputy president, and is marketing Uganda? Is that not a contradiction of sorts? And then number three, what is this that Uganda has that Kenya does not have? Why can't the deputy president address those issues in Kenya instead of going to Uganda? And I've had the benefit of speaking with international relations scholars, practitioners, and diplomats. They said whatever the president, or rather the deputy president, attempted to do was unacceptable. There is no way the deputy president can go anywhere, not even in Kenya as a private citizen. He remains... I mean, the deputy president is on
where are you laying the blame? Are you laying the blame on the deputy president and his protocol team, or is it the not Interior, the PS tried to clarify that it is what is required of him to clear with the head of public service and secretary of the cabinet? Where do you lay the blame in this travel quagmire?
Now, unfortunately, Ben, we have entered into the space of toxic politics, where every party is giving us fake news, lies, alternative facts. So you actually do not know whether the deputy president had clearance to travel. And on the same note, when the DP and his associates claim that it's Dr. Matiang'i or Kibicho who stopped him from travel, we know for a fact that Dr. Matiang'i and Dr. Kibicho have no capacity to stop the deputy president from travel. All those are presidential appointees. So in my view, instead of the deputy president and his people engaging in shadow boxing, trying to give Matiang'i a beating and Kibicho, they should look at President Kenyatta in the eye.
Let's hear Bigambo's thoughts. Javasam, that circular by the head of public service says that civil servants must be cleared by their boss. That is the wording. Members of parliament must be cleared by Speaker of the National Assembly and Speaker of the Senate. The DP's boss is President Uhuru Kenyatta. Where does this leave this conversation?
Deputy President Dr. Ruto is a state officer of high esteem and regard, protected by law, and that is well understood. It's not in dispute. The issue of the circular and the circus, say the happenings of the week regarding the stoppage of the deputy president from ostensibly traveling to Uganda on an ostensible private visit, itself is an invitation for us to engage in socio-political thought that has to go through the contours of the interplay between power and politics in the circumstances. Looking at issues as they are, we appreciate that a matter to do with the travel of a deputy president or a person of his rank to a neighboring state is something that has got diplomatic implication. And this is well covered by the whole field of international law. When you look at the Vienna Convention, when you look at the Vienna Convention as well on consular relations, all these provisions, and of course all this is covered by even our own constitution, Article 2, Sub-Article 6, that all those treaties and that have been ratified by Kenya, and all those treaty obligations that Kenya has, are things then that cover all this entire engagement or the fuss about the travel. But it is proper for us also to examine the fact of history, that is it possible the deputy president has been traveling without such kind of restrictions? If at all such restrictions have not been there, why is it then that these restrictions have been imposed at the moment? Is it possible then that some people have been sleeping on their jobs? What tradition has been there? And why is it that at this tail end of the bad relation between the president and his deputy, the issue of the restriction then becomes a matter that has got to be observed? The other thing that we have got also to appreciate is that there is the hard fact that the deputy president could have been operating with assumptions. These assumptions led to the unfortunate embarrassment that he faced. It is improper, practically so, for a deputy president to be embarrassed in such a manner. If at all it was in bad taste for him to travel without such kind of clearance, as it has been pontificated, then his protocol team, his office, why is it that such communication could not be made to him prior to the same?
All right.
And as a matter of fact as well, we must also have ourselves to respond to this hard fact that should a nation find, a country such as ours, a respectable state, find itself in such kind of bad politics and relation, now pitting Kenya against Uganda, looking at what is going on already, looking at even the statements that have been made by NRM, and the fact that the bad relations between the president and his deputy, based on succession politics, based on the imbroglio of Jubilee politics, should make a nation respectable such as ours to face this kind of unpleasant kind of determination or even appreciation by way of international lenses. And therefore, in closing, I would say that given the kind of mandate His Excellency the President has, it is proper for him to call his government to order. When government officials here speaking about the executive are speaking at cross purposes, when government officials here, members of the executive, are speaking in a manner that chides the other, disrespect even the institutions that are there to guide the smooth running of government,
yes,
then it demonstrates that at the highest level, government has failed.
All right. But Wakili, what are your thoughts on what happened that last week? The deputy president has been has said that this is happening because of political competition. We've seen people in Uganda reacting to this. What are your thoughts?
And I think, Ben, that statement could not be further from the truth. We need to ask ourselves, we are students of history, we are a product of history. Let us reflect 3 years back. There was a time the deputy president was to spend, I think, a weekend in Mombasa. He was kicked out of a government house where he had been occupying since Jubilee government took office. Were there terrorists in that house? Did we have a circular from government? Look at what we've been told over time, that county commissioners, police chiefs are mobilized against attending his events. Do we have terrorists in those events? The answer comes to, the answer is obvious, the answer is no. But moving forward, the question we need to ask ourselves, whatever happened in the whole circus that happened in Wilson Airport is a continuation of what I will call cut William Ruto into size politics. And the unfortunate thing about all this, there is nothing wrong with trying to beat political competition. It is, Kenya is a democracy. We do contend that William Ruto will not be handed over presidency. If he must seek it through the legal ordained means. But the question that we must have is a question where we should not put our country, we should not dismember the international reputation this country has held because we are trying to fight William Ruto. Look at where we are now. We have a whole issue with the Turkish thing. We have entered into a whole diplomatic problem with Uganda because we have mixed our local politics and things that ought not to have been there. My problem with the whole travel issue is one. We have had the side of William Ruto. We have not seen an official communication from government telling us this is what ought to happen. There are questions that my brother Javas Bigambo is asking. The first question is this: William Ruto has been traveling outside the country. How has these travels been facilitated? Number two, the question of the circular that was released by Kenya. When you read the circular, the office of the deputy president is not copied. It is copied to the ministers and the parastatal heads. Are you saying William Ruto is ahead of parastatal? We do appreciate the fact that he's a state officer, but when you write a circular which does not address itself to an individual, where does that supposed to leave the individual? And we have had two such circulars, one in 2017 and one in 2018. Then if we do not have that covered under a circular, and I have perused the law around there, I have not seen the law regulation stating otherwise. But the question we go back now is to the norm that has been there. How has the clearances of him to travel been sourced before?
What's different?
That is now the question we are asking. When he traveled to Zanzibar, when he traveled he's been traveling all over the world, how has the travel been cleared? Even when he had the famous Asla jet, how was that cleared? Because if we do not have clearly laid out law, we go to what is the norm. Because if the norm is that Ben Kitili leaves Standard here through the main gate, there is no law saying you should live through the main gate. If tomorrow you are stopped at the main gate, we go back and ask ourselves, what is the historical nature of how you've been living here for the last 8 years? Those are the questions. But the other thing...
Would there be something wrong if he has been let off easily, but now he's being forced to
But that
follow
is
the
why
law?
now
because of
that is not
what's
why
happening
now
in politics.
onlookers can't stop and say it is politics, because Ben, if you have been doing this way, there is no regulation that changed, and if it changed, as Java said, why don't you bring it to his attention?
Yes.
Number two, we have had this side of the story. We cannot assume by reading pro-government bloggers that is the government of place. We have Canon Cyrus Oguna as a government spokesman. We have people in the Ministry of Interior who are spokesmen there, and we also have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They need to tell us, the same way Uganda stated that we did not have this and that. What is so wrong with not having this position? Number two, you've seen, I saw somewhere, and I hoped it was not a government permanent secretary, responding to the deputy president on Twitter. You know, this country, I think what we need to do, if we were in a functioning democracy, Uhuru Kenyatta ought to have called for a snap election to save the country from the mess we are in.
A year to the election.
Yes, it happens.
But it would be irresponsible for President Kenyatta to go to bed not knowing the whereabouts of his deputy president. And it would be responsible for the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya to travel, especially outside the nation.
They say the marriage has totally broken down.
Even if the marriage has broken down, maybe it was emotional and it was irrational, but where does Muraha sit in this conversation? Because, you know, can you imagine if for some reason Dr. William Samoei goes to Uganda and he gets into trouble? How does that affect our national interest? How does that affect our national security? That's the first level. The second level, the fact that he has done it before in the past, or the fact that he has done mistakes in the past, does not
hold that thought. Let's hear from Roslyn. Roslyn, thank you for joining us. You have been following this, of course, covering this as we have. Is this all about politics?
Thank you, Ben, so much, and thank you to my colleague in the panel. I think what we are not bringing out is everybody has been talking about the circular by Kinyua, but what informed this circular? Remember, this circular came last year during the midst of the COVID. And if you remember the media coverage, we were talking about trying to instill discipline within the public service. And this was because there were concerns that public officers were using the diplomatic passports to be able to travel out of the country, and not on official events, but on private events. And that was the reason why Kinyua was trying to ensure that when you travel out of the country, your boss is able to approve it if it is an official event. If it is not, then you use your ordinary passport to travel. Now, if you look at that circular, it has even given the number of people who can travel. Now, that circular was sent to the ministers, it was sent to the principal secretaries, and it was sent to the parastatal heads, so that at any time that your officers or yourself you want to travel, you must be cleared by the line ministry or your next boss. Now, when it comes to the issue of the deputy president, and I've heard some of us have talked about it, you are required to clear through your protocol officers. So if indeed the government had communicated, then the deputy president will have not left his residence to go to Wilson Airport only to stay there for 5 hours to wait for clearance. Because you know very well that the top officers, the protocol officers will always go ahead, they clear. If it is a passport, they ensure it has been stamped, so that when the top officer comes, they're just cleared.
Yes.
So now, where we sit, we are only speculating. Because if you look at Article 35 on access to information, the government has been very mean with the information they've been releasing. They have been deciding on what to tell the media and what to tell the public. I think it is high time we hold the officers to account and exactly know what really happened. Two, the president and the deputy president, it is only the two of them who talk. Unless the deputy president speaks and the president speaks, we can only speculate what happened, because there are people who are saying the president has not been aware of his deputy's travels. The deputy president says this is the first time that he's being blocked from traveling. So I think what we need to put across is a tough questions. What are we not being told? We know there is a severe relationship between the president and the deputy president, but now to the extent that he is required to be cleared, and nobody is telling us who is supposed to clear him, because the circular we have does not talk about the deputy president. The president's office has not issued a statement on the same. So for now, it is just a back and forth within the security officers and the office of the deputy president.
All right, Jarvis, having said that, let's flip the coin. Is it possible that when people say this could be politics being played, is it possible that the DP's people are playing also politics? If they could have had communication that, look, this has not been formalized, it can bring issues, they didn't have to go to the airport, only for there to be that ruckus and then it is making news and all that. Is that a possibility?
Well,
that's a question.
It is sad that so far we've been so much accustomed to government performing by soundbite and not practically, in a real manner and in a manner that's procedural. If it's a question of politics, then politics must not interfere with governance. Today, protocol officers in the office of the deputy president must have no business playing politics that the deputy president can and should play. They should serve according to their mandates in the best interest of the state officer, in the best interest of the government. That is what they should be doing, not playing politics. And that's why mine is a pregnant assumption that they're not playing politics. The other thing is that if at all we are saying that the president should, of course, and clearly so, and even security agencies, know where the state officers are and where they're traveling to, question arises. Not just a question of traveling to Uganda. Does the president know where the deputy president is nearly all the time? That is very important because the spirit of collegiality is supposed to guide them as they serve Kenyans.
True.
The other thing is that, and as my relative Obala has indicated, it is proper for them, of the government, to provide clear information that does not cause all these kinds of discomfiture that now breeds so much rumor mongering, misinformation, disinformation, and speculation that is not right for good governance and even for the better.
Hoping that it's not politics, Jarvis.
Yes, true.
We have to go for a break. We have to go for a break. I want to hear Karori's, if this is politics, what do you say to that? Very quickly, 30 seconds.
The answer is not if this is politics. The answer is this is politics. Where do we go from here? Where we go from here is a point and a matter that the two gentlemen must ponder, because what is ahead of them is the nation. We cannot allow the nation to be in a speculation and who did, who didn't. At the end of the day, we must separate the instruments of politics and the instruments of governance, which involves the clearance and what have you. And then again, what we must ask ourselves is this, Ben. What was it supposed to achieve? The whole thing is supposed to achieve and to portray some people within the thing as being so powerful, some people as being the real power, and some people having diminished roles. That is what they wanted to achieve. But when you now ask if it is politics, I will say from where I sit, then it was a loss. Because in politics, you do not manufacture a crisis and don't utilize it. Whoever manufactured the crisis of William Ruto not traveling did not utilize it because you stopped him, and now you have left the man with a lot of sympathy, which doesn't help any cause if you wanted to cut him to size.
A lot of speculation, like many of you have mentioned, because we have very scant information, but we are keeping an eye on this. Of course, the Turkish national, Aydin, being detained by immigration officials. We'll stay on top of that story for you, and of course, the politics inside it, we will be analyzing that here on KTN News. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics. Don't go too far. When we come back, shall be focusing on Kenya's readiness for the 2022 general election, which is 366 days away. Is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission ready? Stay with us.
This is KTN News.